like, I definitely believe in the ultimate God. As far as what the Christian Bible or any other Bible perceives, no. But my outlook on religion, I definitely do not have a religion because I feel like it's man-made. Anybody can alter the Bible. I could go 100%. I could go print out my own Bible.
And the people would follow.
So, while he did believe in a higher power, XXXTENTACION suggested that religions are man-made, and he also presented the idea that the Bible has been modified. And this perspective is actually more accurate than many people realize. There are so many great books on this topic, and in this video, we are highlighting a few key points from a book by Dr. Bart Ehrman of Princeton University. Dr. Ehrman is the author of 6 New York Times best-selling books, and one of those is called Misquoting Jesus, the story behind who changed the Bible and why. And that is the book we are exploring today. Now, to be clear, I do not mean for this to be offensive. I believe that there is value and beauty in every religion, and I respect all people regardless of their religious beliefs. Instead, I hope that this video can encourage intellectual freedom, because I am thankful to be living in a time when we are allowed to question religious authorities, as that has not always been the case. And so, with that said, let's begin by diving into the book Misquoting Jesus by Dr. Ehrman. And in his book, the author highlights how there are thousands of ancient copies of biblical gospels still surviving from the early centuries of Christianity, and through decades of examination, Ehrman and other scholars have identified thousands of textual variations between these manuscripts from around the ancient world. In chapter 3, Ehrman writes that, quote, "We could go on nearly forever talking about specific places in which the texts of the New Testament came to be changed, either accidentally or intentionally. The examples are not just in the hundreds, but in the thousands. So, the point here is that X's assessment about the Bible is correct. There is extensive evidence demonstrating that the Bible has been modified, and now we are going to talk about how this happened and why it matters. So, during the first few centuries of Christianity, there were many different congregations in the same way that there are still various Christian denominations to this day. However, back then, the beliefs of these congregations were so vastly different from each other that they could almost be viewed as independent religions. In chapter 6 of the book, Dr. Ehrman says that among early Christians, there were disagreements over fundamental aspects of the faith, such as, quote, the identity of God, the status of the Jewish scriptures, the nature of Christ, and the effects of his death, end quote. So, among these early Christian groups, there were a number of denominations that are now categorized as Gnostic Christians, and when we compare the Gnostic perspectives to the beliefs of modern Orthodox Christians, again, these are practically different religions. But The interesting thing is, during these times, the people of these different congregations did not believe that their perspectives were niche or unorthodox. They all respectively believed that they were the true followers of Christ, and how could it be any other way? If they thought that their views were incorrect, then they would have gone to join a different group. And things get even more interesting when we consider that this was all happening over 1,000 years prior to the existence of the printing press. And so when new copies of the Gospels were being created, they were being handwritten by members of these divided congregations. So Dr. Ehrman proposes that these scribes would have been intimately aware of the ongoing philosophical debates, and that their editorial decisions were likely influenced by these disagreements. In chapter 6, he writes that, quote, "Did these disputes affect the scribes as they reproduced their scriptures? In this chapter, I will be arguing that they did." So, during that chapter, Dr. Ehrman goes on to cross-reference a number of ancient manuscripts, and he demonstrates that over the years, some Bible verses were modified, some verses were added, and some verses were deleted in ways that completely altered the core philosophical meaning of the text. Depending on which copies of the early manuscripts we reference, we can find very different perspectives on a number of central biblical ideas. And this is an interesting issue because we do not have the original copies of the Gospels, which is a fact that Dr. Ehrman highlights during the introductory chapter of the book. He points out that while there may have been authentic Gospels at one point, the modern Bible stems from handwritten copies, and these ancient manuscripts are known to contain thousands of errors which have accumulated over many centuries. While some of the early copies might be close to the original teachings of Jesus, how can we know which ones are correct? Dr. Ehrman and many other historians believe that this is an open question. Anyway, speaking of which, so far we have primarily covered textual variations within the Bible verses themselves, but there is also an open question about which of the Gospels are correct as well. There are dozens of Gospels that were left out of the New Testament, even though many of these were valued by early followers of Christ. And so, with that in mind, it is very interesting to consider how long it took for the New Testament canon to be established. Even the modern church acknowledges that the 27 books of the modern New Testament were not finalized until the mid to late 4th century. And in understanding that Jesus of Nazareth passed away during the early 1st century, we can recognize that over 300 years passed between the life of Jesus and the centralization of what we now refer to as the orthodox Christian perspective. And for reference, That duration is longer than the existence of the United States of America as a country. 300 years is over 8 generations. So after 8 generations of time passed, people other than Jesus himself made decisions about which of his teachings should be included in the New Testament. Anyway, again, I do not intend for this to be insulting to Christianity. This is meant to be a commentary on religious institutions in general. The ultimate reality existed long before any of these religious organizations, and I believe this universe is far too vast, mysterious, and complex for us to limit ourselves to just one set of beliefs. Religions are like fingers pointing at the moon. Rather than focusing on the finger, I believe it makes more sense to focus on the moon. And the moon in this case is the fact that there is a higher power, and that same power is within each and every one of us. Anyway, if this has resonated with you, then I highly recommend doing some more exploration into Gnostic philosophies. Maybe you already have, but my point is that while I haven't found any direct proof that X was studying Gnosticism, many of the perspectives he used to talk about align very closely with Gnostic ideologies. And also check out some of the Gnostic Gospels. I think you may appreciate the Secret Book of John, as well as the Gospel of Thomas within the Nag Hammadi collection. I also recommend checking out the Gnostic Informant channel on YouTube. They have great content. And anyway, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you, and I hope you have a fantastic day. And if you have appreciated this video, then it would be awesome if you could like and subscribe. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Peace. Have a good one. Peace.